Welcome back to Ultramodded Minecraft. If you're not sure what Ultramodded Minecraft is, I highly recommend watching the previous episode. Basically, I selected a bunch of mods from CurseForge, mostly centered around difficulty and aesthetics, and started a hardcore world. I don't usually play with fabric mods, so I'm unfamiliar with most of these installed mods. I've added a few additional mods, such as the Create mod, to spice things up for this episode. Before we get started, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone that has subscribed recently. It was only a few weeks ago now that I was getting excited over hitting 20 subs, and now we're at 100. I'm truly grateful. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. If we reach that, I'll release 300 days in Ultramodded Minecraft. Now that that's out of the way, let's jump back into the world. Day 101, I was still flying. I wanted to find a place to build a new home, so I wandered around for a while. I was having problems with crashes when generating new areas. I fixed it, but it was definitely a struggle in these earlier days. I found the place that I wanted to build in. It was a cool biome with tall peaks and nice looking ponds. I returned home. There was a blood moon, so I spent some time killing some enemies. I planned on creating some waystones. This would make traveling between the new area and the old area a lot faster, but at the cost of a little bit of experience. I only had one ender pearl, so for now I just built the one waystone. I traveled back to the new area and got started clearing a large space in one of the peaks. I wanted some more ender pearls, so I spent the night flying around looking for Enderman. I continued digging. I needed a large space for what I planned on building here. I found another ender pearl during the night of day 103, so I built a waystone and set it up. I returned to the old base to collect materials. I planned on using the new base as a place to build with the Create mod. If you're unfamiliar with Create, it basically adds some fun new structures and machines you can build with, which allow you to automate all sorts of things. I created a waterfall off the side of the mountain, so I could use the water as a sort of power source. Day 105, I hooked up the power from the water wheels and brought it to the main room. Create uses rotational force as power, so you need to be careful how much force is being used. I started decorating the factory floor. I used the chip mod to get some nice variety in. I continued working on the main room and got some shafts set up so I could get power from one place to another. I planned on automating the production of iron, which would take a few steps first. The first step I needed to do was make a cobblestone generator. I built some drills to automate it. And the next step was to pull the cobble out into a millstone. The millstone would crush the cobblestone into gravel. Next, the gravel needed to be washed, which would create iron nuggets and flint. I needed fan, which required some more iron plates, so I built a mechanical press. I set up the fans. They needed water in front of them so the gravel could be washed. The next step was to press the nuggets into ingots, but I needed to filter out the flint first, which would require a brass tunnel. My pickaxe was almost dead, so I returned home to repair it. I needed zinc in order to make brass, but it would only generate in new chunks, so I set off to try to find some. I found some and returned to the Create base. Next, I needed a blaze burner in order to make brass, so I crafted one and went back to the nether and grabbed a blaze. Next, I set up a mixer and smelted up some brass. I placed the brass tunnels down and figured out how to make them work. At this point, the system was pretty much done. I just needed to add a few finishing touches. The millstone was a bit too slow, so I sped it up. Overall, this setup was probably not worth it, as it required a bunch of iron, and it has only produced a few iron nuggets. Though that might be because this area isn't fully loaded in all the time. Still, it was fun though, and I wanted to use Create for more things in the future. As a finishing touch, I dyed the belts. Yellow indicated items would be on the belt, and black would be used for power transfer. Next, I wanted to get netherite. This is usually my least favorite part of Minecraft, but it's not so bad with a hammer. I found my first ancient debris, and I found some more ancient debris. I ended up with 22 ancient debris, which would smelt into 5 ingots. Not bad for a couple days of mining. I spent some time in the Skelly farm and looked into how I could use my netherite. I decided I wanted to make the dark armor, which I could then later upgrade into some even better armor. I needed some black wool for the dark armor, so I ran around and sheared some sheep. On day 120, I crafted the dark armor. I wanted to get unbreaking and mending for the new armor, but the trades were still really expensive. I needed emeralds to trade with my villagers, but I was getting really tired of trading carrots, so I visited a few of these floating castles and got quite a few emeralds. I was also tired of spending 30 or more emeralds every time I wanted a book, so I wanted to convert and cure my villagers so they would have better trades. I got a zombie and named it Mr. Hugs. On day 123, the zombie wasn't hitting the villagers no matter what I tried. I needed some iron, so I took a break from the villagers and went caving. I was checking out the cave right behind my base when I found something incredible. I snuck up on it while I was sleeping and attempted to tame it. It did a lot of damage to me, but I finally got it. And I flew around on it for a little while. I named it Munoa Gentleheart. I checked on my villagers and neither of them turned into zombies. I set up a piston under the zombie and it finally converted. Now both of my villagers were zombies, so it was time to make a cure. I made some splash potions of weakness and threw them at the zombies. Then I fed them some golden apples and let them sit for a while. After the villagers were cured, I managed to get quite a few mending and unbreaking books. I needed XP to enchant my dark armor, so I AFK'd at the skeleton spawner for a little while. Next up, I wanted to make a raid farm. This would allow me to get emeralds, XP, and as a bonus, totems of undying. I followed a tutorial by Mysticat, so I'll leave a link to that in the description. Next, I needed to test it, so I killed the captain and started the raid. Unfortunately, I think I built it a little bit too close to the outpost, because I ended up with infinite raid waves, and had problems with pillagers not even going into the farm. I spent the day trying to see if the farm would even work, but I just couldn't get it to work. So I decided to rebuild the entire thing in a completely different location. I tested out the new farm. This time the pillagers were spawning in a nearby cave. The farm was working a bit better now though, only with a few problems every once in a while. I think in the next video I want to make a stacking raid farm. I was at the raid farm for most of day 133 and day 134. Next, I was planning on creating a new sword. The Frost Slayer served me well, but its damage was a bit lacking. I decided on the Obsidian Claymore, which has a high base damage, almost as high as the Frost Slayer with sharpness 5. I needed more iron for the sword, so I ran around and gathered some up. Next, I crafted the Obsidian Claymore. It's a really nice looking weapon from the MC Dungeons mod. I enchanted it a few times and landed on Backstabbing and Rushdown. Neither of which really helped me out, though Rushdown is nice, especially when you need to get away from a group of enemies. I ran around killing cows and horses for leather, and got Mending, Sharpness 5, and Unbreaking for my new sword. I spent the rest of day 136 at the raid farm. I wanted to compare the XP gains from the skeleton farm versus the raid farm. I found that while the raid farm gives more XP, you're pretty limited by the fact that you can only spawn a single raid at a time, and you have to wait for each wave, which can take several minutes to spawn. But the drops from the raid farm are much more worth it. Not sure what happened on day 138, I'm assuming I was just AFK at my farms. I was leaving the skeleton farm and accidentally popped 2 totems of undying. I had just come back and wasn't really paying attention, which almost cost me my world. Next, I enchanted my dark armor. I got protection 4 on everything except for the helmet, on which I got fire protection 4, and the boots. Next, I wanted to upgrade the dark armor into the Titan Shroud armor. But I needed 8 different colors of wool. So, I needed to make a mob catcher. I forgot this mod was even installed, and it was a total game changer. They're capable of catching any passive mob, such as animals, villagers, and even the mythical mounts. I ran around looking for sheep. I decided to build a pen for the sheep over top where the raid farm was. I had already cleared the land, so might as well get some use out of it. I made all the different dyes that I would need. Fortunately, I already had most of what I needed. Though I forgot that you can craft green dye, so I went around looking for a desert. While I was out, I found another Zartak. I just grabbed it with the mob catcher and took it back home with me. I dyed a few sheeps the colors I would need and sheared them. I needed 12 of each color, which was taking a really long time, so I decided to make an automatic wool farm. I mined some iron and finished the wool farm. I crafted everything that I needed to make the upgrade cores. Each upgrade core required a netherite ingot and some bolts of fabric. I only had enough to make 2 upgrade cores, so I upgraded my chestplate and leggings. I headed back to the nether to try to find some more ancient debris. I created the last upgrade core I needed, and upgraded the rest of my gear to the Titan Shroud armor. Next, I was really tired of the small shack I had set up in the village, so I got started on a proper trading hall. I was building when something happened. I noticed that my dragon wasn't where I left him. On the ground, I saw a saddle and diamond horse armor, and you already know the rest. I think the dragon suffocated inside the tree when it grew. So, on day 149, I built a gravestone for Manoa. I'm disappointed in myself for letting something like this happen again. So from here on out, I started keeping my mounts in a mob catcher when I wasn't using them. I finished up the roof of the trading hall, and finally it was done. I spent quite a lot of time on it, but it was definitely worth it in the end. On day 150, I moved my villagers into the new trading hall, and ran around looking for any other villagers that I could put in the hall. I ended the day resetting trades for Protection 4 books. I ended up getting Looting 3. I tried to add it to my sword, but it just wouldn't work. I'm assuming one of the 2 enchantments that I had on it already were exclusive with looting. I continued resetting trades. I was still looking for Protection 4. I finally got Protection 4. Next, I set up a new area where I could convert villagers. I got a new zombie that I named Mr. Hugs II. Actually, I forgot to name it, and when I went back to my house and came back, it had already despawned. I got a new zombie and actually remembered to rename it this time. The villager I was trying to cure escaped and almost died, and almost took me with it. After curing the villager twice, the trade went from 50 emeralds down to 4. I was running short on books, so I decided to fly around and kill some cows. I had grabbed a few cows when I was making the sheep farm, but I wanted to save them for something I would do in just a little bit. The leather situation was getting pretty bad, so I decided to make a semi-automatic cow crusher using the Waddles design, link in the description. Cow crushers require 20-something cows in a single block, so it would take a while to build up. I was also getting tired of my backpack always filling up, so I upgraded it to a diamond one, which almost doubled the amount of space it had previously. I decided that I needed a lot more villagers, so I got started on a very basic villager breeder. It's designed by me based off of several other people's designs. It isn't crazy efficient, but it works well enough for my purposes. I saw my first blue moon, which apparently increases your luck. I made sure the villager breeder was working. It would take a while for villagers to build up, so in the meantime I went on a quick adventure. When I was working on the raid farm, I saw something in a nearby cave, so I went to see if it was still there. Deep in the cave, I saw another dragon. I slowly made my way to it. It was pretty far in, and there was lots of monsters between me and the dragon. It started attacking me immediately. I had my shield ready, which helped out a lot. After a few attempts of taming it, it was finally mine. I didn't have any name tags to name it, so I'm going to need help with naming it. Leave a suggestion down below. I returned home on the back of my mount. So I visited a nearby village and, kindly asked some villagers to come with me. On day 159, I looked a bit into the Things mod, which adds a few trinkets and other items that can be useful. I needed some gleaming ore though, so I set off to find some newly generated chunks. I think my zinc mine would have worked, but I completely forgot about it. I dug around for a long time, but I just couldn't find any. On day 160, I was still digging. I just couldn't seem to find any. I didn't find any gleaming ore, but I did find some gobber ore. Gobber is a really cool mod that adds some powerful stuff to the game. Better tools, better armor, and rings that can give you various effects. The first thing I crafted was a ring of ascent, which allows you to float up into the air, sort of like a shulker. But it also gives you immunity to fall damage while it's in your inventory. Definitely worth picking up. Next, I made a Gobber Paxel, which is basically an all-in-one tool. I also made a Medallion of the Hero, which gives you Hero of the Village while it's in your bag. I spent some time in the skeleton farm, and enchanted my Paxel. I wanted to turn a better profit when selling carrots, so I cured one of my farmers. My villager breeder started to work, and I had a few new workers. After being cured, the villager was able to trade 4 carrots for an emerald. He was also now a master that could trade me golden carrots. I also cured my cleric. There was a blood moon that night, so I walked around and killed some zombies to try to get some rotten flesh. On day 164, I made a ring of return. This would allow me to return back home instantly, even between dimensions. This would be a huge time saver. I wanted to get looting 3 on my sword, so I grabbed some books and disenchanted it. I wanted looting 3 because soon, very soon, I wanted to take on the End Dragon. Which meant I needed quite a few ender pearls. I went back to the Nether to barter some gold to the piglins. I set up a very basic piglin bartering system, and I received quite a few ender pearls from them. I needed some more blaze powder, so I traveled to a nearby fortress. I don't know why, but I went mining for some more gobber ore. I think that I thought that I could make a ring of the void, which lets you travel to and from the end. But I couldn't make it yet because it required end gobber ingots, which you can only get from the end. I decided to fly all the way back, rather than using my new ring of return. Man, I don't know what I was thinking during these last couple of days. On day 168, I headed out to find the stronghold. It was north of me, so I figured I knew roughly where it would be. By the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but I don't actually know the seed of this world, and I kind of want to keep it that way, to sort of keep the mystery. Although, if I do want to make a slime farm in the future, I may have to look it up. I found out roughly where the stronghold is and started digging. I entered the stronghold and it was eerily quiet. I pretty much tore the entire library down. I've been low on books for so long now that running into this many felt really nice. On day 100 and nice, it took me a really long time to find the portal. Fortunately, I had just enough Eyes of Ender remaining to fill the portal. I wasn't quite ready to fight the dragon yet. I took down the coordinates and made it easier to find the portal again. I went home to prepare and came back, ready for whatever lied in wait beyond the portal. After killing the dragon, both the egg and the dragon scales dropped through the portal. I wasn't quite done with the end yet though. I wanted to find an end city. I found a few wrecked ships, but they don't have an elytra. The better end mod makes the end look so much better. Seriously, I don't understand why the vanilla end is still so plain looking. I used my Ring of Ascent to travel easily between islands. In the distance, I spotted an end city with a ship. I raided the city. I got an elytra and a few shulker shells. I used my Ring of Return to return home. I put on one of the music discs I found and got to renovating my storage building. This build has existed for almost 100 days and still didn't have a floor. Next, I wanted to dye my elytra. Yes, you heard that right, there's a mod that lets you dye the elytra. I went with a light blue and purple. I added mending and unbreaking to the elytra. Next, I went back to the nether. I wanted to be able to mine the end gobber ore, which would require nether gobber tools first. My portal was blown up by a creeper. I forgot a flint and steel, but fortunately I had a fire charge. I headed out to find some new chunks to find the nether gobber ore in. I found a good amount of gobber ore. Unfortunately, I didn't realize I needed silk touch to get the most out of each ore. I returned home and crafted the Ring of the Phoenix, which would make me completely immune to fire and lava. Next, I wanted to build a door for the storage room. But I wouldn't settle for any regular doors. I wanted to make one using Create. I made slime using dough and lime dye, and built the required components for the door. It had been a while since I made a door with Create, so I messed it up a few times. I built a toggle, so every time I stepped on the pressure plates, it would change the direction. It was still a bit slow, so I sped it up. After a few adjustments, it was done. I collected a bunch of sand. I'm not sure why, I didn't actually use it. I think I just wanted an excuse to use some shulker boxes and get out of the house. I returned home to the Super Harvest Moon, which is better than a regular Harvest Moon, I guess. I harvested my crops and did a good bit of trading. I did a bunch of trade resetting. I think I was looking for Efficiency 5. My Paxel was pretty slow, so I wanted to speed it up a bit. I didn't get Efficiency 5, but I did get Fortune 3. I looked around for spawn. The dragon skills had definitely despawned already, unfortunately, but the egg should still be there. I was planning on using the skills, but I guess I'll have to resummon the dragon a few times in the next video. I found the egg and brought it home. I returned to the nether to mine some more nether gobber ore. I wanted to build a nether gobber pick so I could mine the end gobber ore. I needed more regular gobber ore first though, so I went mining again. I returned home and crafted a nether gobber pickaxe. I also crafted a staff of the stars, which would allow me to place unlimited torches. I returned to the end to mine some end gobber ore. My secondary mission here in the end was to obtain some chorus flowers. Unfortunately, chorus flower is pretty rare with the better end mod installed. I found another end city and got another pair of elytra. I continued to explore and found some really beautiful biomes. Eventually, I found some chorus plants and shot the flowers off of them. I returned home and planted the chorus flowers. By the way, whenever I use the Ring of Return between dimensions, my XP disappears. It's just a visual bug, and when I relog, my levels come back. I crafted the end gobber ingots. The first thing I made with the ingots was an end bow. This thing's damage is absolutely nuts. I had found a cool looking fish in the end and wanted it to have a nice home in the base, so I made a fish tank in the back wall. I crafted a glass blower's table, but I actually ended up settling on quartz glass for the tank. For some reason, the blood moon made the pillagers spawn like crazy, so I went away for a while to despawn them. I was looking for something in the floating cities. I think it was name tags, but I'm not really sure. My game crashed and it took me a few real world days to resolve the issue. I honestly thought I was going to lose my world for a while. Eventually, I figured it out and returned home. When I got back, I realized my fish had despawned. Yeah, I hadn't named it yet, so it just kind of went away. Fortunately, I knew where to get some more, but I was just kind of bummed out. Next, I decided to upgrade one of my librarian villagers fully, so I had access to unlimited name tags. Next, I wanted to set up an Enderman farm. I needed a bunch of leaves first, so I went around and collected a few stacks. I gathered all the materials I would need for the farm, and created a Ring of the Void, which would let me instantly travel between the end and the overworld. I followed a tutorial by Blaze Dude, link in the description. The farm was done and the rates were amazing. It gave me a ton of XP, which was the main thing I was after. I returned and attempted to enchant my end bow. I still don't have a good enchant on it. I haven't even seen infinity on it at all. On day 190, I was still resetting for more trades. I think I was actually going for efficiency this time. Next, I wanted to spruce the base up a bit. We were approaching day 200 and I wanted the world to look nice. I built a new path to the graveyard and to the animal pens. By the end of day 195, I was mostly done with the renovations. I created a magnet ring which would bring items to me. It took me almost 200 days to realize that I could set a hotkey to reset villager trades. This improved the process significantly. I was resetting for a specific trade. What that trade is, I don't quite remember. I think it was efficiency 5 again. I still hadn't gotten it. But I was finally able to get it. It was only efficiency 4, but I could combine 2 books to get efficiency 5, and I was tired of looking, so I took the trade. I wanted to cure the villager, but I couldn't remember how to grow mushrooms fully. Turns out they just need a dark area that isn't exposed to the sky. The villager cured fully, and I got efficiency on my tools. I created a cow pet. It's kind of terrifying. It's just a floating cow's head. Apparently it can clear negative debuffs every minute. I was going to need it because I planned on summoning the Wither. I made the preparations necessary for fighting a Wither. I gathered a bunch of buckets of milk and loaded my inventory with totems of undying. I went down to the bottom of my world in my mines. I dug a fairly long tunnel and got my skulls and soul sand ready. I placed the skulls and embraced myself. The bow phase was really easy. My bow did half of its health. The sword phase was a little bit more difficult, but eventually I killed the Wither. Truthfully, I was a little disappointed. It seemed a bit too easy. Either way though, we managed to kill both the End Dragon and the Wither in this video. We made a lot of progress overall. I tried to figure out what to make with the Nether Star. I figured I would save it to make the end armor from Gobber, which would require a few more Nether Stars. I returned to the Nether in hopes of finding more Wither skeleton skulls. Unfortunately, I didn't find any more, and day 200 was approaching. I found myself in a piglin bastion, and found the Pigstep music disc, probably my favorite music disc in the game. Day 200 came, and I had a bittersweet feeling. Sure, I made a lot of progress in this video. I killed the End Dragon and the Wither. I found a dragon or two. I created a trading hall and got fully enchanted gear. But I had an itch in the back of my head that told me that even harder challenges were yet to come. Will I lose more of my friends? Will I be able to survive another 100 days? Do I truly have what it takes to face what is to come? I guess you'll have to find out in the next episode of Ultra Modded Minecraft.